I'm going to give you a short list of words, and I'd like you to give me your emotional response as to whether it's a negative or positive. So I'll say the word, and you please quickly tell me out loud, negative or positive. Fear.
Negative.
Happiness.
Positive.
Health.
Positive.
Risk.
Positive.
Well, you're just trying to throw me off here because you can probably tell what I'm doing. But generally, we view risk as negative. If you talk to people in the business world in particular, risk is a negative. And that perception poses a fundamental conflict with reality. And that reality is simply that if you want to grow, you're going to need to take risk. So I'm going to suggest to you this morning that risk need not be a negative, which might be inappropriate because it seems like this group is just gung-ho risk takers. But generally that's not the case. So since risk is inescapable if you're interested in growth, let's talk about two ways to take risk intelligently. The first way is to stack the odds in your favor. Stack the odds in your favor. One of the ways to do this is to only accept risk that you adequately understand. It seems that there's no shortage of people, to use a business or investing world analogy, that are willing to stake a significant part of their net worth on an investment that they don't thoroughly understand, simply or solely because it's rising rapidly in price. Then, only after they've lost a bunch of money do they realize that the business model that they invested in was something like television programming for house cats or something ridiculous like that. A little understanding on the front end of a decision to assess the risk goes a long way to stacking the odds in your favor to avoid mistakes like those. Another way to stack the odds in your favor is timing. Occasionally, right timing makes all the difference in the world on getting the odds on your side. Let me tell you a brief story that best illustrates taking a well-timed risk. After World War II, a young lieutenant and his general were traveling by train. When they boarded the train, only 2 seats were left open, and they were directly across from a beautiful young lady and her grandmother. So the soldiers sat facing the ladies. As the train pulled out, it went through a long tunnel. For 10 seconds, there was complete darkness. In the silence of that moment, the train's passengers heard two unmistakable sounds: a kiss and a slap. Everybody on board had their own perceptions as to what had happened. The young lady thought, "I'm flattered that the lieutenant kissed me, but I'm terribly embarrassed that grandmother hit him." The grandmother thought, "I'm aggravated that he kissed my granddaughter, but I'm proud that she had the courage to retaliate." Meanwhile, the general mused, "My lieutenant showed guts to kiss the girl, but I'm annoyed that she slapped me by mistake." Only the lieutenant knew what had really happened, for in that brief moment of darkness, he had seized the opportunity to both kiss a beautiful girl and slap his general. Stack the odds in your favor, number one. Number two is clearly understand and recognize the risk that's carried, or the gain and loss potential that's carried in the risk. Clearly understand the risk, loss, and gain potential. To illustrate his point, I'll pick on Rick. I said I was going to pick on Rachel, but I'll pick on Rick because he's closer to the front.
Good.
Let's say I cut a deal with Rick. And the deal I cut with Rick is that I agreed to pay him $1 every time he was willing to place his hand flat on the table, if you do that, under an object, taking the risk that the object would fall on his hand. And let's say that the odds of this happening were 1 in 50. In this scenario, the object would be this 1 gram paperclip. This is a pretty good deal. I think that Rick would take this risk. Am I right?
Yes.
Now let's say that object becomes this 12-pound dumbbell. All other terms of the arrangement stay the same. The compensation stays the same. The probabilities stay the same. Now, this arrangement does nothing for Rick. He's probably not going to accept this risk. Am I right? But I guarantee you some people would. They might accept the risk because they think the odds are 1 in 50. There's only a 2% chance it's going to hit my hand. I'll do that. But they're not looking at the gain-loss potential of that risk. So let's look at that quickly. Rick accepted that risk. And let's say the probabilities played out textbook perfectly. 49 times he plays without incident. For the 50th time, got his hand. Rick's gain potential, he made 50 bucks. His loss potential, he's probably got $1,000 in doctor's bills, perhaps significantly more, to correct his crushed hand. You have to recognize that every risk carries within it the seed of an undesirable outcome. And you have to be willing to live with that outcome regardless of how improbable it is. So number one, do everything you can to stack the odds in your favor when taking a risk. Number two, recognize ahead of time the real gain-loss potential to discern is that a prudent or unprudent risk. In wrapping things up, risk is inherent in succeeding, but that doesn't mean we have to be risky. In fact, playing it safe is oftentimes the risky bet. It's important that we learn how to intelligently accept risk. At the end of every year, my wife and I will ask ourselves this question. We'll look back and ask, what were the top intelligent risks that we took? I feel that this is an interesting barometer, this question is an interesting barometer to how much growth we should expect. So I challenge you on that basis, begin asking yourself that question periodically. What intelligent risks am I taking? You might discover that your growth is limited because of a perception of risk as a negative. I submit to you this morning then that despite the general public's, not this room's, perception of risk, as a negative, wise risk really is positive.